It's important to always understand, where we came from. And I think that that's one thing that I've taken with the Village of Bayside for our winter maintenance program is understanding what we had and where we're going. There's no doubt that we impact residents' lives daily during the winter time, but then also we impact the environment, and we have to do both. And we have to make sure that we're taking care of the constituency as well as our environment. So I am Shane Albers with the Village of Bayside. I'm the operations superintendent here. I've been in charge of the department for the last 6 years. And we've made some great strides over those years. My crew is small. We have 6 people. There might be a lot of people on watching the webinar right now that have very similar sized crews, and it's doable. It's possible. It takes creativity and ingenuity. So we have 6 CDL operators. All of my operators, including myself, we've all gone through salting certification through Wisconsin Saltwise. We attend annual chloride reduction classes, participate in the American Public Works Association snow show this year down in Missouri, which is a fantastic show, and lots of resources there. And then something that we do too is we host preseason training, and that's in-house training. That's all of us operators sitting down in a room discussing smart salting routes and operations. We do that during the season, and we do it post-season too. It's always important, again, to where were you? What did we do? How can we do better? And it's always kind of one of those things. And sometimes it's not necessarily doing better. It's just kind of reflecting on how our operations went for that year. Just some fast facts about the Village of Bayside. We're located right along the shore of Lake Michigan in Ozaukee and Milwaukee counties. This presents its own challenges. Every community has their different challenges, whether it be hills and curves, country roads, or city streets. We're rural in nature, but very urban how the village is set up, meaning that we still run a ditch and culvert system. Our roads are narrow. We have wildlife everywhere. It's very, very interesting. Being along Lake Michigan, like I was saying, presents its challenges. I can think of several storms last year alone where the west side of our village had 4 inches plus of snow, and the east side of our village, right along the lake, had literal slush to nothing to wet roads. The exact same time snap. It creates a challenge for us. Our community jets out into the lake instead of running a nice clean lake shore. So interesting operations just of itself. My team takes care of 46.2 lane miles and 14,500 feet of sidewalks. We have 1,600 addresses and 4,600 residents that live in our community. And like I was saying before, we're often working with lake enhanced snow. Our current fleet, we have 3 patrol trucks. Each patrol truck is fixed with a 11-foot front plow with trip edges. 2 of our trucks have mid wings, and 1 of our trucks has a big front wing, an 11-foot front wing. Our roads are only 20 feet wide, so anything bigger than those mid wings gets a little challenging, but there certainly is a place for those plows. I'll probably mention it a couple times throughout the presentation, but we've switched our entire fleet over to the Blockbuster, the winter Blockbuster system. I'm not a sales pitch in them, but we have gotten 5 times the life out of those cutting edges. After the first snowstorm, they wear into the contour of our roads. We have our angle on our plows set to the mid attack angle, which helps us scrape and clean the roads better. And we're typically running with plow downs. 2 of our patrol trucks have pre-wet systems on them. In 2026, we're going to be putting in a pre-wet system onto a truck that doesn't have it. We have a brand new 1-ton truck that should hopefully be being delivered here by the end of December. And that one has a full liquid and granular setup on it. We're really pushing that liquid application. Those 2 pickup trucks have plows on them. Again, we really work with mechanical removal here in the community. And we have various pieces of equipment like snow blowers and brooms, things of that nature to take care of our sidewalks. Um, as I was talking about, our fleet is growing. Next year, we are actually adding an additional 5-yard patrol truck. Given the way that the market has gone with supply chains and issues of that nature, we chose to keep the truck that we were going to replace. And I actually bought a 995-gallon Camion brine applicator system for that truck. That truck is going to be a dedicated liquid truck, which we'll see later on here in the slideshow. As we talk about, winter maintenance, it's really important to know how we used to do it, right? That's one of the most dangerous things that we can do as operators and leaders of Department of Public Works and local infrastructure as well. It's the way we used to do it and always do it. Well, that doesn't really work. We have to be flexible. We have to be able to change with the times. We have to be able to be creative and come up with our own solutions and directions through conversation and support of board and leadership. So in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, there was a really high demand that was placed on our roadways. Because of that, the crews would put excessive salt down. We used to have a clean road policy. We no longer have a clean road policy. No calibrations were being completed. And quite frankly, the trucks we had holes in the bodies, not from lack of maintenance, but, calcium, and sodiums are very corrosive to metals. So it would actually leak out salt at the same time that we're spreading salt. Training was minimal from a smart salting perspective. It didn't really exist so much at that time frame in the early 2000s, late 90s. And calcium chloride was the only additional tool that we had to help with winter road maintenance. Our current snow removal policy states that we go out at around that 2-inch level. However, the real world practice is that everything is planned. And I think that that's the biggest picture here is we're not weather people. We have multiple tools in our toolbox to be able to try and figure out what the weather is going to do. I personally have shifted. I've used several over the years, but I've shifted to the Weather Channel app and then also the National Weather Service. Over the last several years, the National Weather Service has really, really, really done a nice job at helping predict what's going to be coming, but then also holding local meetings and webinars pre-snow events. Information is power, and that helps us make educated decisions on how we're going to handle what's coming our way. Because our snow policy states that we don't come out, around that 2-inch level, one of the items that we have found is with the anti-icing applications, we are preventing that bond between the snow and the road. We're a plow down community, meaning that if there's any material on the ground, we're trying to push it. We're not actually using salt and quote unquote burning it off. It's not an appropriate way to deal with winter maintenance. And it's one of the reasons we switched over to the blockbuster systems was to be able to extend our life of our snow plows. One of the other items that we're doing is we have salt limits that are placed per mile when we're working through winter storms. Now, some communities have cards, and those cards will say at this temperature, at this snow rate, at this snow depth, et cetera, this is how much salt you put down. One of the items that we have to do is we have to be able to adjust on the fly. The cards are great. We have attempted to use them with different applications and we'll make it work. We just have to get it to fit the Bayside protocol. But one of the items that we'll do is, if we're going on a long event, which is what we've had here in the village, over the last several years, we get these long 18, 24-hour events versus the come in, dump the snow, storm's gone, we can clean up. So based on the precipitation, the current temperatures, the road temperature, the duration, and the anticipated snowfall. And then the last thing that we look at is what's happening after the storm. Are we going to have 0 degrees? Are we going to have 20 degrees? All of those things help us make decisions on how we're going to complete the cleanup and whether or not we're going to have Mother Nature helping us melt some of the snow, or if we have to be more aggressive with the actual removal of the snow to make the community safe. Some of the challenges and considerations, and this is everyone, the village certainly has gone through some of these, but we're also on at a different level now than we were. Some of the challenges that we run into with salt and smart salting is sometimes we get to the storm too late. It catches us by surprise. Maybe we didn't get the call in from the police like we should have, or the forecast was wrong, which has happened several times last year alone. Currently we have a high public demand to make sure that our roads are clear, which all of us have that same public demand. One of the things that's unique to the Village of Bayside is we have 6 to 7:30 traffic and we have 4 to 6 p.m. traffic. A lot of our roads have very low travel. Because of that, there's not a lot of salt activation with the granular, and that's where the liquid comes into play. Some communities might be dealing with restricted budgets. And I know we've gone through these growing pains, new team members, as we have retirements come up and backfilling those positions, it's retraining. Well, I think one of the coolest things about having new team members is you get that opportunity, hopefully, to train them right out of the gate to not have to, so you're not breaking old habits in winter maintenance. Off to the right-hand side of the screen, that was one of the capital investments that we made this year. There's 12,000 gallons worth of brine storage. We just took delivery of those a few weeks ago, and we'll be getting those set up here within the next couple of weeks so we can really start to amp up our brine application and service here in the village. As I was saying, everything that we do is planned. There's a potential of 4 different routes that the village would end up using. I use several weather apps, like I stated, to gauge what the storm's going to do and how we need to react. Again, we kind of have that Achilles heel with the lake over here. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it really hurts. So it's one of those things we have to work through. We're always looking at the duration of the storm, the type of precipitations, temperatures, time of day. Is it a weekend? Is it a weekday? Do I have school? Do we not have school? And then anti-icing activities are planned based on all the above as well. As I mentioned in previous slides, we run with plows down. If the truck is out and there's slush or any type of precipitation on the roadway, our plows are down. We plow in one way or plow 2 ways, and we salt in one. That way we're preventing from pushing off our granular products that we're putting down on the road. And then our main protocol is to mechanical removal, but we also use tools like calcium. We use tools like sodium, and we are using brine as our main storm fighting techniques. We're also starting to look into the organics. We've started to talk to other communities on how they're using organics and working through some of those different ideas on how to deal with snow and ice. Every year we set goals for our community. One of the things that we've been trying to do is we want to reduce our granular salt purchase by 33%. I can tell you, because of last year, we were able to accomplish that, but I think everybody was able to accomplish that. We started annual calibration on all equipment that can drop salt, everything from spreaders that you walk behind to pickup trucks and our big trucks. We do granular and liquid calibrations. If you've never done it, it takes time, especially the first time. You might take an entire day or a day and a half just to get the granular aspect dialed in. After doing it a few times, you can get that time down pretty significantly. We work to enhance our metric on tracking what we're doing so we can try and hopefully see our efforts being successful. There's nothing worse than going out there and quote unquote doing as you're told and not understanding why. But when you can take a look at the numbers at the end of the year and compare them to year, you'll actually see what you're doing is working. And that's kind of a cool thing. And the minute that the team sees it, and the community sees it and sees the efforts that you're working towards, it's pretty neat feeling. Um, we have a very robust public engagement service with our community. We are constantly using our electronic platform, Bayside Buzz. We use Facebook, other avenues of Twitter, and other social media outlets to get our word out there. We work with our community to hopefully engage their contractors to start using less salt, figure out a way to offer the same service without, using the same amount of chlorides. Super important. One of the programs I started, I believe it was 4 years ago now, was a salt take back program. And the messaging behind that was you would see people at the end of the year literally throwing entire bags of salt on the ground because they didn't want to store it. And so instead of having that happen, I launched the salt take back program, which has become very successful, where folks can bring their extra salt to us. We just mix it right into the road salt. So it's recycled and used appropriately during winter storms. And then one of the last winter goals that I have personally is, how can I become a resource for other communities that are trying to do the same thing? There was communities that were resources for me, and I'm thankful for that conversation to be able to engage in new thought processes. How do I get from A to B? It's a lot easier than you think it would be. And you have to start somewhere. So Bryan and Bayside, we have started this project back in 2019. Bryan was introduced. It was introduced on a very small scale. It was like, hey, what's this thing that I see on the road, right? And so from that point, we ended up being able to grow it. We got serious about Bryan. We got serious about winter maintenance. Not that we were doing anything wrong. We just wanted to kind of shift to a more environmentally friendly way of offering the same level of service in our community while reducing our costs, but also reducing the environmental impact. So in 2020, there was a Bryan on a budget applicator constructed, and that's coming up here in the slideshow. This applicator cost us $20. We had the tank, we had the pump, we had the spray bar from another project. It just made sense to try something. So about a half a day's of work and a trip over to Menards, we had ourselves an applicator that we were able to put the brine down. At that time, we were purchasing brine from a local county. In 2021, we introduced brine back into our pre-wet system, where we used to run straight calcium chloride. Now we switched it over to brine. On average, and I thought that this was kind of a staggering number, 30% decrease in granular usage at 10 gallons per mile applied at the spinner. That's a big number. That's one truck, and that's a big number. We saw the same level of service on that road that we saw using our typical salt application rates. And that kind of was the first buy-in that we got from the team to make sure that, hey, this is going to work. We just need to take some time and get serious and dedicated to it. In 2022, we built our own brine machine. As you know, brine machines can be very expensive. $150,000 down to probably a $15,000 to $30,000 range. The more you spend, the more brine you get quicker. For us being a small community, I chose to go bigger storage tanks so that I could produce and store brine over a long time versus trying to make it as I go. Didn't make sense for us at that time. In 2023, we adjusted our capital requests for the future of brine and took a really aggressive step this year and in the years to come. And then this year, we took delivery of a brand new brine applicator. It's a Camion 995 gallon slide into our 5-yard dump truck. So we're able to cover a very large majority of our community. We have a brand new 1 ton that's coming this year. That truck is aged out. We took that opportunity to, put full liquid capabilities on that truck. And we have a brand new 5-yard truck that's going to be coming late 2025. That was a 2-year project based on, again, on the supply chains. And then in the upper right, we talk about, just kind of our downward trend since 2018. We used to have 500 plus pounds of salt we were putting down a mile. We're putting 100 to 350 pounds down per mile. Again, that number varies depending on time, precipitation type, road temperature, and what's coming down the pike. Those are all very, very important things to keep in mind. Brine and Bayside. So this is my brine on a budget applicator that was constructed. We just had a Honda fluid transfer pump sitting around, got used for other various items, but not very often. So we hooked an electric valve to if you look at the black hose that goes into the pump there, you'll see 2 red wires coming off. That valve was $20 at Menards. Now, this was a few years ago, so maybe it's more now. And we simply took those totes, 275-gallon totes that you can get very inexpensive or for free from many places, and hooked it up to our pump. We apply 30 to 40 gallons per mile, and the way we figured it out, everybody's wondering, well, how do you know? We put a certain amount of water in the tank, and we drove, and our sweet spot is 17 miles per hour, is that 30 to 40 gallons per mile. Now, with our new system, with our Camion system, it's full GPS, so it's going to put down exactly what we want per mile. In 2022, I went and visited another community, and I got the idea to go visit another community through this webinar series. It was something that was being presented on, and I couldn't afford to buy a brine machine. I had tried to budget for it and capital it and everything else, and I just couldn't quite get the numbers to work. So at first, brine was cheap for us. It was like 10 cents a gallon. You can't really compete with that. Then it went up to 18 cents, and then finally it was 34 cents a gallon. And at that point, I said, where we're traveling to get this, time restrictions and storage and everything else, it didn't work anymore. So we had to do something different. So we built this machine right here for $3,700 in about a week's time. A couple of those items are purchased, and a couple of the items we had lying around. That stand we had out back from probably 1985, but it's working perfect for our brine tank. In the next slide, we'll show the operation of the actual brine machine itself, but we can make about 1,000 gallons a day. So when you talk about brine machines that can make 1,000 gallons an hour or 6,000 gallons an hour, that's obviously where your price comes in. But for right now, as we're building our program and learning through the process, this is working fine for us. And then we utilize saline hydrometers to test the salt percentage, right? To get that 23.3 that we're looking for. Pretty simple process. So the tank is the mixing tank, if you will, the county line tank there. We put salt in there, and then through a series of valves, we run the water through those pipes over the salt. And if you look in the upper left corner of your screen, you'll see that 4-inch drain pipe that's laid out at an angle. That water drops right back into the plastic tank. Follow the plastic tank down to the red horizontal arrow. It goes right back into the pump, right back through the pipes, and right back over the salt. So making salt brine is very simple. It's very simple. It's something that I would encourage anyone that's looking to get into it. This is not a hard process to do. I'd be more than willing to help be a resource as needed to help guide through this process to make the brine. Very simple process. Yeah. So the Village of Bayside has done some road brine case studies. And on these case studies, we've taken a look at past practices, the current past practices, as well as our goal and where we want to get to. So if we were to focus on this slide, there's a lot of words on this slide, so we just need to kind of look at more of the content. Let's take the kind of middle of the page here where it says same storm and 250 miles of travel span. Now, mind you, we have 46 lane miles of roadway here in the village, and we obviously travel those roads several times over and over again, clearing snow and applying de-icing, anti-icing materials. So under the past current method, when this case study was written, a storm like that, we might use 45 tons of salt. And it sounds like a lot, but that's 250 miles of nonstop driving and plowing, probably over a span of 18 to 24 hours. That salt would cost right around $3,150. Our goal and where we're really trying to push to, just using the science and the calculations of actual product, we're pushing to use around 2,500 gallons of brine in a storm of that nature with about 20 tons of salt. Significantly reducing the amount of salt that we're utilizing to do the exact same service level of for the community. That cost we're looking at around that $1,650. So not only are we saving a significant amount of money, we're also reducing the amount of chloride, the amount of rock salt that we're utilizing. So on that last kind of overview there, it says old to new, a reduction of salt by 25 tons leads to $1,750 of savings, leading to a decrease of 50,000 pounds or 1,350,300 tablespoons of salt being used, resulting in 6,750 gallons of salt or water not being polluted. Those are really big things. We're obviously looking out for the economic impact as well as the environmental impact. We are continually striving to be better and look forward in winter maintenance here in Bayside. Kind of highlighting our capital improvement plan. The picture off to the right is our brand new Camion 995 gallon anti-ice brine applicator. We just took delivery of this thing late December last year. We're waiting on a couple parts yet so we can put it into service here. Due to the unprecedented supply chain issues, we've really had to reimagine how we go about our capital requisitions. And you'll see as we go down further through this list here. This year, we are converting one of our patrol trucks into a brine-only truck. That's what that tank off to the right-hand side is for. That truck will go out and do the anti-icing prior to the storm. And then it will have the capabilities. It'll still have the plows and the wing on it. It will have the capability to go out and actually work a storm as well. We're not quite at the point where we want to go to a liquid only route. We're still learning, we're still growing, and we're still experimenting so that we can make sure we can right size the service to the community and the department. In 2024, we should have taken delivery of it. We're right there though. It's 1 week out. We have a brand new 1-ton dump truck, plow truck that's coming into our fleet. This truck, we went away from the auger pan style spreader on the back side of the truck, and we actually have a slide-in unit with brine capabilities. So this truck will be liquid and granular application to work our cul-de-sacs, our tighter roads, and our parking lots so that we can really implement brine village-wide in all of our operations. We ordered a brand new patrol truck chassis last year. It's scheduled for delivery here in the next month or so. Through this whole process and due to the supply chains, years ago, you could buy a truck and build a truck within a matter of 4 to 6 months, depending. Now you buy a truck and you wait a year, and you build a truck and you wait another year. So we're looking at getting this truck sent off, at the latter part of this year to be built, to hopefully be put in service at the very beginning of the 26 season. If not, it'll be the 26, 27 season that this truck will actually see the road for snow removal. We also last year purchased 12,000 gallons worth of storage tanks for the brine that we make here in house. We have made thousands of gallons of brine already with that homemade brine maker that you saw earlier in the webinar. And we use a transfer pump to transfer that brine from our tanks into the storage tank. 25, 26, we're going to be looking at putting air road temp sensors on our entire fleet. As of the end of this month, we'll have 2 out of the 4 capable trucks will have road temp sensors on them. We hope to have road temp sensors on everything by the end of the year. Like I said earlier, with the patrol truck in 2025, we're going to be getting our new truck hopefully delivered and built towards the end of this year, taking delivery early 26. And then in the end of portion of this year, we're going to be taking the only truck that doesn't have brine on it, and we're going to be setting it up with pre-wet capable applications. And then the final thoughts I have is kind of the big picture for me is this: is Brian at first was intimidating. We wanted to figure it out. We needed to figure it out. And we think we have it figured out. There's always a learning curve. There's always growth that can happen. But stepping into brine and brine operations and brine applications, it's a lot easier than you might think. Truly clear visions and discipline is going to guide policies, the investments, and the overall operation and how it gets implemented. Calibrating your salting equipment is a huge step because your eye can't tell how much salt weighs. The old application techniques used by watching salt come off the spinner versus relying on our computers inside the truck to tell us how much salt is coming off the spinner. It wastes a lot of salt, and it wastes a lot of money, and it damages the environment. Train your crew. Step number 2 after calibration is train your crew. Train the department on policies, train the department on the vision, get the buy-in from your department to take your winter applications and your winter maintenance to the next level. Celebrate your victories. Big, small, it really doesn't matter. Celebrate them all. Victories are important to concentrate on, because even reducing salt usage by 1 ton in a snowstorm that would typically be equal, that's a huge win. It's a huge win in the pocketbooks for the taxpayers, but it's also a huge win for the environment. Lay out a long-term capital improvement plan. Talk to your local organizations and leaders like Saltwise, DNR, U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Seek and search for grants to help pay for this stuff. Lean on your local municipalities, your partners, your neighbors. Bounce ideas, talk. It's super important. There's a lot of people out there that helped get me started that will also help you guys get started. And the last thing I have, and we talked about this earlier in the webinars as well, is track your metrics. Fuel, miles, operator, truck, salt tons, brine, calcium chloride, or other additives, sand, etc. Track everything you're doing. You might find trends. You might find trends in your specific roads that may need a little bit more aggressive maintenance. You might find trends in operators that might lead you to an opportunity to have a conversation on retraining, to align with policies and reduction of salt usage. Metric tracking is a huge piece of the puzzle. It helps you diagnose things that you might not even notice if it was just day to day. But when you start to see it year to year, storm to storm, month to month, you can really kind of dig into them a little bit deeper. So, Allison, thank you so much for having us on and giving us the opportunity to go over our winter maintenance here.